And we had 2 weeks where we did like 75,000 USD, but we had never touched the product.
Hey everyone, they are Chris and Shell, e-commerce founders who went from failed Amazon stores to running a multi-million-dollar Shopify brand. This episode breaks down the key decisions behind the business, a whole bunch of money into this Amazon thing, and then kind of wiped out from the sounds of it. Like, why didn't you just wrap it up there and be like, geez, that's enough?
Because we used to think 100,000 a year used to be a lot back in the day, but now we're like, $1 million isn't a lot anymore.
When you guys had a supply issue and you had to cut on the business entirely for like getting to 200K Australian and then having to cut to 50, 60K just because the product quality was not good.
So it was 24,000 in May and then 195 in June. So it was literally like the overnight success.
During that time you were running ads, or what were you just like? Chris, Shell, welcome. It's great to have you guys here. Start off with telling us a little bit about the brand that you guys built, where it all started. And I understand from what we discussed earlier, you actually previously started on the Amazon situation. So I'd love to dive into that a little bit more and see how that kind of then transitioned into the business that you have today.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. We're so happy to be here. So looking forward to today's conversation. But like you mentioned, we started in the Amazon world. So I was in corporate America in sales for 15 years. Shell was a business owner. She's in the aesthetic world. And we both were kind of done with that chapter and looking for something else. And with scrolling online and social media, you see all of the hype of do this and you'll make $1 million a month and it's passive income and all you have to do is, whatever. Right. And so we start to explore that a little bit more, and it went completely left, and it left us in a lot of debt with, at that time, like no plan B. So it was like, we need to make this work. We were, as it was being kind of promoted, drop shipping on Amazon, which is against their regulations. And that's something that basically got very jammed up, and stores got locked up, shut down, tied up a bunch of money. So that was on top of the investment that we had already made to kind of learn the process and things like that. So we got into it pretty deep. And I'm always like, I don't know if it was pride or ego, but it was like, we are going to figure this out because it has to work, and you're seeing, other people be able to make this eCom thing work. And I know we're capable, right? So it's like, what do we have to do? And so we started to research more, and that's kind of how we stumbled upon the Shopify side of the business. And we were like, okay, well, if we can control this more and if we can build our own brand, then we can make this work. So kind of where we entered into like looking at more mentorships and things like that, but on the Shopify side of things. And we did one and we started to get our feet wet, but there was still, there's just, it's a lot to learn, so mentorships became really, really helpful. And then we ended up doing 3 so far, like over our last 3-4 years in the eCom space, like in general. And each one we learned something that we've applied and then needed more. So we would enter another one, and that's where we met Heyman. So he's been
remember when we met.
Sure.
We met, and then like when I met them the first time, they actually were doing product research. So essentially, for any person like hearing about this, we're just looking at getting product opportunities. Ideally, the goal was we give them 5 ideas, they take one, and they just launch with that and go to the next level. And they picked a product that I actually right now got to the 4 million per year from just the validation we did. And then, they run into issues. I remember very vividly, PayPal blocked the money, blocked out. And I remember having to tell them, well, I don't think we're a good fit anymore. And I remember that was very challenging.
It kicked us out. No. But yeah, with each challenge you learn. And now it's like when challenges arise, it's like almost exciting. Like you look at it like, okay, we're going to learn from this, because ultimately every single time it takes us to a new level.
I know so many people that do things similar to what you guys did. Like, they're in the job and they're frustrated with the job, and they're like, I'm done with this thing. I got to do something more. And you might see those like passive, income, like press spacebar and make money kind of like opportunities. And you guys went down and you did that, and you put a whole bunch of money into this Amazon thing, and then kind of wiped out from the sounds of it. Like, why didn't you just wrap it up there and be like, geez, that's enough? Like, I don't think we can continue losing here. Like, What do you think it was? And the reason I want to ask this question is because I think a lot of people need more of that stuff down in the hole there when you're actually like lost to get them back up the top. Does that make sense? So what was it for you that had you just like push forward and really keep driving?
People are doing this. We're seeing it in these mentorships, right? Kids are, quite frankly, half of our age doing it, so it works. And we just kept saying, like, the only way this doesn't work is if we quit. And when it's hard, it's usually like right on the other side of that massive, massive pain where things start to turn around. And so when we actually like look at the journey now, it's so clear that that's exactly what happened. And it was like, it's been a journey, like really betting on yourself. And to be able to do it together, it's really cool.
You guys actually don't give up. That's something I appreciate. Like when I met you, you guys are really relentless in that category. So burning the bridges, we're just going to do this. There's no way back. And I think that's like very strong mindset that I've seen.
And I think a lot of times, like, now people ask, like they're seeing, and I think that's with social media too, right? You see everyone's end result, but you don't see what they went through to get there.
No one talks about that part.
They don't. And I think it's so cool, like you're saying, to talk about this stuff, because that's just, like the little glimpses that we heard of people's struggles is what kept us going. Because it's like, okay, anyone experiencing this, other people feel it too. And we just have to keep going because we know we can do it. It's being done and you're seeing that it's happening. There's no reason that we can't have it also. So I think it was being very clear on the vision of like what we wanted and the lifestyle that, the freedom, the flexibility to be where we want and like to build something together has been, we were close anyways, but it's brought us so close. It's been a wild journey, like for sure. When
I'm in the party, right?
It's
brought us also closer.
Yes, actually. And like, even you're looking at, like, if you zoom out of your Shopify dashboard, right? For when you started, it's like, you're seeing the little, and then you see a little like, boop, and then you see dude, and you see that up and that down. And it's like, whoa, you feel it. You really feel it when you think about where you were in life at those times.
Yeah, but just to give you like, I remember very vividly, I know actually your historical structure with the brand. So when you started, you run the ads, you got a little bit of sales, and then PayPal locked you out and you had to pull the trigger and kind of pause everything. Because it was, you had a company that you closed and PayPal kind of had an issue with that. And you had to almost pause everything.
Like the data didn't match on the back end, which we didn't realize, like business. And so they locked it up. And at the time it was like a few $1,000s. And when you're starting, that's like a ton of money, especially when like I quit my job. Like this might be oversharing, but like living on savings, cashing out 401ks, like literally betting everything on it. And I'm like,
PayPal will lock you out.
Yes. And I'm like, this has to be an epic story. Like it has to be great because this is just wild. So like buckle up and
remember all the defining moments. Like I remember them. I'll just give the audience a little bit of feel of them. I'll tell you 3 of them that I know about. The first one would be the PayPal issue, where you guys had first time got to 10K a month, and then boom, everything is out. Like we can't do anything. Money out. You messaged me. I remember like vividly. How can we get the money out of PayPal? And our invoices with the supplier. Like what can we do? I remember that very vividly. Second moment was when we started scaling together, and you guys had a supply issue, and you had to cut on the business entirely for like getting to 200K Australian, and then having to cut to 50, 60K just because the product quality was not good. That was the first wave of success, and you had to adjust again. One would be after the Q4, we had a lot of stability. We had a terrible January and February. It's like I actually positioned more creatives and you scaled to the highest level ever and profit levels. So I would say you faced 3 moments that I see were very challenging. First one, being locked out of your money. Second one was bad product quality. Third one was a bad season, 2 months, which I know it's not a lot for some people, but 60 days of instability and then pushing everything.
Felt like an eternity.
Yeah, definitely. And so just if you could maybe just step us through like the stages, because what it sounds like you had some initial traction and then some issues and then like some further traction where you scaled the brand bigger. So are you able to maybe like how long's the business been running for now, and just kind of just some like benchmarks of like this was, starting point, 12 months later again, just a little bit like paint the picture of that kind of journey just so I can understand the different stages.
Yeah. So if you zoom out on Shopify, you see flat like this. for a couple of years, right? Maybe a
Oh
little,
wow.
maybe like
No.
when I talk a couple of years, we kept, I mean, even in the mentorships, I'm like, does it take people this long? Because you hear sex stories of somebody saying like, well, in 6 months, you know, I took off, and we're like, we're not experiencing that. So like,
And so during that time, you were running ads, or what were you just like? Oh, you were.
tested different products. And then, you know, we probably did, I think until we found the one that changed the game, it was what?
This has been October 23.
But I think we maybe tested like 10 to 12 products before we found one where we saw in October of 23, we saw a little blip. And that was, I think maybe we did, what was it? Like,
That's when you guys met me, right? That was when we met for the first time.
yeah, that was like, right. And we were spending at the time, we were like hemming and hawing over spending like $100 to $200 in ads a day. And we were like, oh, it's so much.
Stressing. What is CBO? What is ABO?
Yeah, what is ABO? What is CBO? Like it was all such a foreign language to us at the time. But what changed in that moment, like mentally, was like, okay, you're seeing it work. So now, regardless of if it's sustaining us, you saw a glimpse of, okay, this is actually real. And that was enough to say like, okay, let's really fine tune this, because if we can do this much, then we can, it works. And that's all we needed to like,
We needed
that glimpse of it.
Because before it was just blind faith that we just knew it was going to work somehow, but then we saw it, and then we're still here.
How do you think you guys would have got like for example, if you didn't have each other as like co-founders and you were both like bouncing off of each other and, you know, keeping each other accountable, and like, do you think it still would have happened? Do you think you would have, you know, been able to push through, or do you think it certainly would have been possible?
With every part of my being that this doesn't happen without her and us together. Yeah. Like it is definitely a team. I mean, there's days where, and to the people that are doing that on their own, I give them so much, you know, it is a lot, because there's days where I'm like, I don't have it. Like, I don't even have a thought that's like, that's getting me to the, and she'll do something. And then I'm like, oh, okay. That was like the little glimpse I needed to like push to the next part. And then there's days where she's like, I can't. And I'm like, okay, I got it ready. And then
Every week. I'm surprised. You guys are telling me this right now. We talk every week. I'm literally telling you everything. We have that vision.
we know the long-term vision, but it's like the little moments, right? When you're just like, oh, you're fried, or it's like some app isn't uploading properly. Like last night, she's like, we changed some things around and like, it's not showing up properly. And it's like, okay, let's shut things down. Let's take a break for a second. Let's revisit it. You know, it's like really, sometimes you need someone to pull you up a little bit. And the mentorships are great and you have a community, but for the way that we operate, it's essential for us to have each other, for sure.
And there's just like a certain, it's like you can talk to, for example, like there's a conversation you have with like your friends, and that's very, very, very limited in terms of what they understand. And then you've got like the conversation you might have with like the people, like maybe like the coaches, the mentors, the people that are really, really, really close to you, and you can talk about most things. And then there's like the conversations you can have with like your co-founder or like that one like confidant in the business. And it's like, hey, have you seen the cash in the business account? Hey, you know, like it's like no one knows those things. And so it's a very heavy burden, you know, to just carry that by yourself. And sometimes I find without that kind of individual that you can, you know, have conversations with, share the load a little bit. They can kind of, like you said, lift you up here. You can kind of lift them up there. It is very, very, very important. So I think it's a blessing that you guys have each other to be able to actually like complement the business journey. It's really, really, really special. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so grateful. And it can get like, I mean, there were times where it was like dark, you know, and it's like, it's hard. I mean, this was like people are seeing where we are now, and all of their friends are like, well, tell us about eCom. I want to get into eCom. And it's like, they're not seeing the 3 years that it took to get here. And the nights where it's like losing sleep, or I'm crying on the floor, like I don't know what comes next, you know, like I'm Haman's learning a lot right now. He doesn't know the emotional side of our business.
No, but the thing is, it's so true though, because like the thing is, people always tell you what they like. So it's like, and the reason I hate, for example, listening to these kind of like individuals that talk about, you know, follow your passion. You know what I mean? Like you should just like bet on the thing that like lights your heart up and, you know, makes you feel alive. And I'm like, man, when I was starting, like I was just terrified of being poor, and I had my rent due, and I had people trying to take my car from me, and I had debt collectors knocking at my door. I had to make money. You know what I mean? And like, that's the true, real. But it's like, I wasn't sitting there being like, oh, I'm going to like, envision my future and get into my passion. It was like, none of that was an option. It was just like, you need to make this work, dude. And if you don't, you're going to go, I don't know, back onto the welfare line and see if you can pick up a check because you've got no money. You're going to lose your house, your car, everything. It's like, that's really what drives people at the start. And I think like what you're saying right now is like, your friends are coming to you and they're like, tell us what to do. And the thing is, if you told them what you are doing now, like they would also think it was easy, versus like, hey, let me tell you the last 3 years. And in fact, let me tell you all of these moments that I was literally like broken down on the floor and I couldn't even think to go on one more day, but somehow I managed to claw my way through. It's like, that's the actual reality of the situation. And I think it's incredible that you guys are seeing it for what it is and okay to talk about it and not just be like, yeah, it's been easy, it's been fantastic, because like it's just the truth of the situation. You know what I mean? It's not an easy game. It can happen very quickly. Obviously, you guys have seen like scale between like where you started versus where you are now. And it's funny because you can kind of look at the company, and I say this all the time to clients and founders in the community, where I'm like, I saw my wife with her brand. She built it from like zero to nearly $400,000 a month inside of like a year and a half. And I was like, the growth that you can have in e-commerce is almost unmatched. You know what I mean? You can grow so quick. And so because most people look at it, they're like, that was easy. But you're sitting there like stressing out of your mind during that whole period. And you're like, you don't understand what it took. It's very interesting.
And you see the memes, like it things can change overnight, but it takes, 10 years to get to that night. The way that is like so deeply felt, like just to share a little glimpse of that life-changing moment. It was May. So we started working with Heyman as our media buyer in June, July.
As in this year, was it?
No. 2024.
Okay.
No,
we met on October 2023. So it's 2 years in terms of that initial product validation. Then as I mentioned, we had to part, like just, they were kind of exiting from that.
Our welcome.
Yeah.
23?
I remember that. And then 2024, so about probably like a year and a half ago, they messaged me May, and they were actually May, June. We have this new like stability, and like, do you do media buying? And we don't want to insult you. We know you're very busy. So they're actually more like defensive on joining in terms of like the media buying kind of levels. And then we did the call, and then we started working together. I think it was June 2024.
Yeah.
So about a year and a half ago.
So it was it got really, I was like, am I applying for jobs again? Like it got like, and I was trying and things weren't working. So I'm like, okay, we just have to stick with the plan. But it got to a point, hopefully you're okay with friends. But we were looking at each other, and she looked at me. She's like, Chris, like, this is the last month I have of rent. Like after this, I know what's coming next. And so we were like, okay. We looked at each other, and we were at this point, we're living in, we got rid of our personal apartments. We moved in together, like anything to make this work. Like we were each spending crazy money. We live in Los Angeles, right? It's not a cheap city to live in. And we're living separately. We're like, okay, we were both like dragging our feet to move in together. But the voice got so strong of like, okay, now this is the time. You have to, like, more money we can spend on ads, the more money we can put into the business. We have to make the sacrifice. We hadn't lived for 15 years.
You guys actually were like that when I met you. It was like, Heyman, we're hiring you because we don't want mistakes. We want really a guaranteed outcome. We're not here to joke. I remember you actually telling me, I'm cutting all the expenses because I want to get to the next level. I remember having that call. I was in Thailand, but I remember like when we had the call, it was, Heyman, we can't, like, we need to really get there. There's no joke.
Yeah, it was like, it was the last month of rent. Like at this point, like, I'm just going to share it out because maybe this helps somebody, right? But like, we're on like, we're on like food stamps, right? Like we're getting, I don't know if they have that, but like that was so helpful to us, right? Like we're bare minimum things just surviving. And it was like, this is the last month of rent. And we looked at each other and we're like, locking in
Like something has to change.
Something has to change.
Yeah.
So we locked in. It was like we woke up every day, we went to the gym, came home, worked. We rebuilt our whole site. We added a bunch of new products.
Like 14-hour days.
14-hour days consistently over and over and over again. And we changed a bunch of things. And say in May was Shell's birthday. And we remember being like, in May, it's not going to be like this. And in May, it was like that. And we were still struggling. And we locked in. We rebuilt the site. We added a bunch of new products. We launched 2, and we found an angle that worked. And when we launched them we went from, I think it was like the whole month of May.
16,000 USD month before to like
and total sales, right? 15,000 in sales.
Oh, all-time sales.
No,
for a month.
Monthly. Okay, got it. Yes.
Okay, I have it here.
She's got it up.
Not here.
But you see,
like,
you see the
numbers.
I have it in Australian. So it's 24,000 in May and then 195 in June.
195 in June.
Yeah.
So it was literally like that was the overnight success, right? Of like nothing, and we saw a little blip of like, okay, 15,000, but even then profit, maybe a couple thousand USD, right? But not enough to sustain our life. So that shift where it's like we changed a bunch of things and we found an angle that worked. We had a couple lights we had a couple angles that worked, and overnight.
Yes, it's actually you had an angle that's working, and just to position this, May 2000, I think in 24, I think you messaged me for the first time around June, and it was like we have this new wave. It seems to be very stable, and it was almost like fear. I remember when I messaged you back, it was like we're unsure about it. Is it sustainable? And then I join in, and you tell me the quality of the product is bad. It's like we have.
So we have an angle that works, right? But it was on a product that we hadn't even physically touched yet. So it went essentially viral, right? And it took off. And we had 2 weeks where we did like,
at the time,
probably 75,000 USD, but we had never touched the product. So we had 2 weeks, we were just crushing sales. And then all of a sudden, all these customers are getting products, and we have it. When I tell you influx of emails of bad product, we were like,
bad product, insults,
very
bad.
Like getting 20 emails a day of unhappy customers.
And we were doing our own customer service.
And at the time, at that time we were doing everything because we didn't have the budget to do.
Of course. Got it.
Oh my gosh, now what do? We're super stressed out. And now everything's crashing, right? We see a glimpse and now
like,
Yes, and not only that, just to give you a feel, I remember in that month of like bad product, they actually me like significant amount as well. And they told me literally we had to cut on the volume. So we had like a month where almost like they're paying a premium, obviously. And on top of this, we're cutting on the ads, but we're not scaling necessarily. And that's when we did the pivot, where we actually got that winning product that's stable and just scale it up from there. But before that, I remember very vividly, we had a good, like June was good, and then drop in July. And then in August, just scaled up fast.
Yeah.
So you managed to rectify the product issue within that kind of July month and get everything sorted, start trusting the product again, and then continue scaling up.
Yeah. So we had some quality control
It seemed
issues, and it managed them very quickly. But that became a very quick lesson we learned. So now when we, are adding to our catalog, we're checking product quality first. That is something that we don't play with, because that was not a fun part of the journey either.
So what things were you focusing on? Say, for example, January, February, March, April. And then what things did you do more focus on in terms of like August, September, October, November? Because like what it sounds like is your business went from like $10,000, $12,000 a month, somewhere in that range, $10,000, $15,000 a month through the start of the year, and not really making enough profit for you guys to kind of like live off. And then it went to obviously this like spike and then the quality situation in the middle. But then the back end of 2024 sounds like it kind of like really had some good, strong consistency. So did you notice things that you did more of when you were winning that you perhaps didn't do enough of in reflection during that start of that year?
I think it was just finding our angle that customers, basically how to sell without selling.
Yeah.
How to get, like, what does our customer want to see in order to pull the trigger on purchase, right? And so once we found that, it was just doing more of that.
Where, yes. And you guys also just, I remember very vividly, you went into all the like even mistakes at scale because you had the issue with the quality. And then I remember July, no, September, you had like reported some profit to me, which was I think about maybe 20K or 15K. And then we look at the actual P&L and you're actually more profitable. And you were not necessarily, I remember the triple whale on the true profit, your numbers were not accurate and you were essentially stressing yourself for nothing. I was like, that's an induced stress. And they were using this for a while.
We had no idea how to do any of that back end stuff. So we learned that.
That got a lot better as time went on too, because we didn't know what we didn't know.
And I remember we had this conversation in September 2024 where you guys were doing the true profit and triple whale, but because of the cost of goods that was kind of always changing, you were not necessarily in control of your P&L. So you're not sure about how much money you're making. But then we created this Google Sheet where you guys literally every single week, and we've been doing this for a while, every single week they track every single dollar and we can track profit. And we're doing this almost like every call I do with them, and I don't think I missed any call about that, like without asking about that. And we load the profit. We look at how much are we making exactly, what's like the dollar amount, what's the cash flow situation, and then we keep scaling. And we've been doing this, I think, for like a year plus.
Mm-hmm. And where it gets tricky for us, because we have a central warehouse and we're selling essentially worldwide, is that each country has different prices, different shipping, and then we got hit with US tariffs, right? And so that was another shift that needed to be made that is affecting profits. And what you learn is like it's always going to be something. So it's like, how do you build the strength to continue to weather those storms, and what community can you build, and what communities can you be part of, and support can you find that? And that's what's so cool about doing these types of conversations and calls, is like you hope that it helps somebody, because there's a lot of lessons along the way, and you just have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
And I know that you guys also weathered a lot of challenges, even like, as I mentioned, tracking numbers. Another one, you mentioned the tariff. We actually picked initially the cheapest option. I remember that. And then we were like, no, that's not good. Or I remember it was an option just to make profit. And then it was, no, that's not good. Let's revert back.
That was a fail fast also. Yes. But it's failing fast, right? And then like recovering quickly as you can.
Are there any, so say for example, like for people who might be listening and they're kind of starting, they're where you guys were 3 years ago, right? They're picking their product, they're having a look, they're kind of super unsure, and they're like still working their job, maybe like trying to transition, looking for that kind of like hope that you guys had when you finally saw that little beep, beep, beep in the Shopify dashboard. Like, are there any key things that you kind of like might advise that person to do, like do more of this, or think like this, or maybe really read this book, learn this skill set? Are there any characteristics or things that have really, really, in reflection now, you can see helped you through that journey the most, both of you guys?
I feel like we have to just, at the time when we had nothing, we were trying to do all these other, everything, trying anything that could help us make money. And I feel like when we focused on one thing and did Shopify only, like that was it. I feel like you have to just put your head down.
Pick the thing.
Yeah.
And then we can Shopify. You guys actually do creative mainly.
Right.
That's the thing.
eCom, not Shopify, but like that platform.
No, not even.
It's all the platforms because we're on.
But in general, it's like we're trying to pick up little side things or just anything to just keep us above water. But it's like when we really just focused and said no to everything else. Like there was a point where it's like, it's gym, homework. There's no dating. There's no birthday parties. There's no night out with friends. It's like we're just until we turn this around, And it's different for everyone. I feel like for us, because our backs were against the wall and there was not another option of like when it's hard. And I'm like, if there was like 5,000, 10,000 invested, I'd probably been like, forget about it. But it was deep, and when there's no other option and you have to make it work, like you don't have a 9 to 5. And is it risky? Yes. Was there is that right for everybody? I don't know. I don't want to say that. But for us, like
it pushed us more.
We had no other choice.
What was the, if you're comfortable sharing, like how much had you invested? If you're comfortable sharing that number, if it's too sensitive, that's okay. But like, ballpark.
But I think you guys are okay.
Think of like we're doubled down, right? So like we're both investing, and I want to say,
I remember in the beginning we said, was it like 50?
I want to say like 40, 50 each.
Yeah.
I don't even know how, but it was a lot.
But you're buying. You're buying promises. You're buying all of this stuff that is promised. That when you just own it and take control yourself, that wouldn't have happened, right? We were buying Shopify stores. That's how we knew it existed.
And now we know everything that they were trying to tell us about. It was just all a scam in a way.
And another,
Wait, what? You mean the pre-built Shopify stores aren't a thing? Holy.
Right.
Like we were paying for people to run ads. We didn't know what that even meant. Now you're like, oh my gosh. Like, and the other thing, so something that I think was like a mental shift for us at one point, we would be like, oh, well, we're trying to do eCom.
Mm-hmm.
And then I swear the shift happened when it was like, what do you do? Because that's everyone's favorite question when you meet somebody in LA. Is like, oh, what do you do? Right? Oh, well, we're trying to do eCom. And when we started owning, we do eCom.
It's a different thing. And I remember also you guys went into like an LA mentorship and the guys were doing like 50 and 100K. And I remember, Chris, you telling me, well, we're doing like 200K plus. So it was like they were impressed about like you coming in trying to learn and you realize that you're actually the bigger fish.
Yes. Or it's like you're seeing, yeah.
It's what you mentioned there, I think, is such a huge thing. I actually did a video on my social the other day about it in terms of like you hear it with founders and it's exactly that language of like, oh, I'm kind of like, testing this little product thing, or I've got this little side hustle that's, maybe I'll see how I go. I like that non-committal language, like tells your brain like it's not important and it doesn't matter if I fail and I don't really care about it too much. You know what I mean? And so it's like all your behaviors follow through around those kind of words that you use to describe yourself. I love that you mentioned that because I think it's such an important thing. And I literally said it in a video like last week where I was just like, if you could say like, I'm doing, I've got, I will do, like it will be done. You know what I mean? Like every bit of your attention starts to be a lot more focused on that. So I think that's a huge component. Yeah.
Like truly changes your brain chemistry. And you have friends who's like, oh, I'm looking for like something I can do on the side. And it makes me like internally kind of cringe because this is not something you can do on the side, even though that's what we thought in the beginning, right? You realize how deep it is and it's back end and it's
a whole business,
accounting and it's bookkeeping and it's
everything.
A lot. It's customer service. It's managing a team of people that are now it's more automated. Now we can spend a couple more hours at the gym or a couple more hours with friends on days here and there. But then there's also days where like, this is a crazy season. Things aren't going good and we have to not go outside for a little while,
So tell me, if both of you have all of the knowledge and the experience, everything that you've kind of extracted, all the pain, all the suffering, all the lessons, all the crying on the floor, and all those great times, and you knew it all at the start. You're way back. You rewind right into the moment you're about to start that Amazon situation, and you can look into that crystal ball and be like, "Whoa, I got to spend this much, and I'm going to go through all that, and it's going to take that long." Like, do you think you would still participate in the journey?
No question. Sure. No question.
Yes.
I was going to say yes, absolutely.
I said that all along. It was like, even if God said, okay, it's going to take you 10 years to get to all the places that you dream about.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. In the journey, it's like you thought, it's when you get to your first Shopify plaque, right? That was really cool. I never thought I would celebrate a trophy that much as an adult, but that was really cool.
It was.
But it's like you think, okay, we have all these goals, on our whiteboard that we check off when we hit certain like revenue goals and things like that. You get to your first 100K month, then you get to your first 100K week, and then you get your first 100K profit or whatever, your first million. And those are just like, okay, we check them off. Cool. What's next? And so it's always going to be your goals, but it's, you think it's getting to that point, but we were talking about it recently. It's like the journey is actually the amazing part. It's not the end result. It's like who we're becoming through all of this that actually changing our lives and hopefully changing somebody else's life at some point.
And I think you guys, there's just one thing I want to mention here. You guys always, like even just as a media buyer, I remember we talked about ads, we talked about a lot of different things, but you guys always pushed the goals. Like it was clear. Like we never actually hit a target and it was like, well, we're done. It was like, what is next? What's kind of the bigger thing? And I think we kept doing that like across like since the beginning, essentially. I remember when we were doing 50K or 100K, we were actually looking at 200-300K a month. And I was actually pushing you guys on a weekly basis. It was like, we're doing 25K per week. How about we get to 50K a week? How about we get to, and you guys actually, sometimes I remember you were impressed. Like, hey, wow, us doing 100K a week? That was like a number that you guys thought about. But just this kind of obsession on the next goals. And I remember you told me we crossed that level. What is the next one? $1 million a month. And that's actually currently our targets.
Yeah. He'll bully us sometimes because he'll be like, I mean, if you want to just make 150 a month, that's fine.
I'm horrible. Yeah, I'm horrible for that as well. I remember like probably 6 months ago, we had an event and there was a bunch of like the VIP people sitting at the front of the room, and we were going around at the start of the event, and one of the founders was like, I think she had just recently launched like a couple of months ago. And she put her hand up and she was like, I'd love to share a win. And then she's like, yeah. And I'm like, yep, what is it? And she's like, I've made 100K. And I was like, this month? And she was like, oh, no, just since I've launched. And it was just like, it's the same thing. But I think it's fantastic if you can tolerate it, and you can put up with being bullied a little bit. But it's actually like when you're around people that see so much more for you and your company than you do yourself, like it forces you to be like, geez, like how much more could I go? You know what I mean? I want to close that gap. I want to move to that next level. And I think Hammond's very, very, very good at that as well. And I think that's why we get along quite well. Quietly.
This industry, it's a positive thing, but it's like it's brainwashed us because we used to think 100,000 a year used to be a lot back in the day, but now we're like,
you're making that in a month
more.
Or in a week, really, right?
More.
Or like, and that's the beginning, right?
Like $1 million isn't a lot anymore.
And we talked about like a lot of things. We talked about like purchasing homes that are worth millions. Like to do that, you can't just do that with let's say a corporate job or something. Or you can, but it's going to be with debt versus you do it with a business that's actually building value. And just for any person listening, Australian wise in the last 12 months, we did actually 4 million and you guys made about 500K. You extracted as of the business more than 500,000, I would say, probably in value. So that's just extracted after media buying, ad cost, accounting, everything, and you're putting all the numbers and you're able to extract that value. And you mentioned to me that doubled the salary you used to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the industry in general, you see like, and that's what's cool about having like him and who's working with other brands or building a community and meeting other people doing things, because we always say this, it's like once, and that's the beautiful part of, we're not from LA, right? We've moved to LA, and once you see something or you know something, you can't unknow that and unsee it. So if it's possible for somebody, it's possible for you too, if that's what you want.
Right.
And so, us talk about numbers and he's like, well, I have a brand that just is doing this and that. It's like, okay, that's so real.
Okay, we're showing you guys like a $1 million a month client. I showed them like $1 million a month. They were like, oh shit, $1 million a month? What's a ROAS? And I would show the ROAS 7. And they're like, 7 ROAS? $1 million a month? We want that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very good.
The lingo used to be overwhelming and all of that. And it's like, really, as time goes on, like if for anyone starting this journey, is like with time comes knowledge, and it's just built on week after week and day after day and month after month, and it all compounds. And I know we're going to laugh about the struggles that we've had now one day, and we're like, oh my gosh, that was so much. But I know that that's only going to become more as you continue to scale and grow.
And can I actually say, I'll say like a story that I remember of you guys, but just in terms of the listeners, you can delete this or cut it out if it's not acceptable. But I remember I was actually, so you guys know, I traveled to Thailand and I was there and I was doing coaching with the eCom Capital community. And I had a call with you and we were talking about numbers and everything. And you were like, we're scaling up, but we're not necessarily living from this. And I can't even pay for my nails. I can't even pay for things. And I remember I was like, we need to make more profit. We need to scale more. And I remember that was kind of the mindset and structure. And at that time, you guys were paying me initially per month. You switched to 3 months. And it was like, just position 90 days. And I remember you guys upfront paid. And just for any person listening, still significant Australian money that was paid in that payment of 3 months. And they did that right away. And they were actually committed strongly in that month of August. And I remember that kind of mindset of like, we're going to get there and you're not going to give up. And that's actually something that pushed me to do this, let's say, aggressive action when we saw the ads working and scaling.
And you talked about passion and stuff before. Like I never thought like we entered this with I'm not passionate about ecom, but you're passionate about living a certain life, right? And this is something that can get us there. And now we are passionate about ecom,
Right.
and people say one thing, and I'm like, you just open it. I don't even know if you want to go there with me, because I will just talk about this forever. Like I love it.
Actually, dangerous.
It's just, it's everything of who you become through the process that is so addicting.
What are you most excited about for the future of the company? What are you most excited about, like that the company is going to enable you guys to do? And I'd love to switch a little bit into some strategic things that we can dive in and rip into.
I mean, from a company standpoint, I think is just like year over year, we've already doubled our revenue and our profits. So if we can double that again and even more than double that.
And one last thing. Have big targets, but you guys are also two people. That's something we didn't talk about. Like, just not one person that's managing. So in 1,000,000, one person is good, but then two, it's like kind of like everything is half. That's something to note.
Right. And not that this particular brand is fully optimized and running on its own, which we would like to get to eventually, but being able to start another one, because there's two of us, like we have time, we have resources, we have team that is automating part of it. So that gives us more freedom to maybe start another brand. We also we are in like 4 or 5 different markets, right? Like worldwide, I guess, but there's certain markets that are better seasonally for us. So off seasons for one area, if we can really optimize and push in other areas, which, Australia being one of them,
Come on down.
Yeah, I feel
like we're building that. It's like almost like
trying to make Australian ads. So we're looking up like on chat, like how do you say in Australia? Like what's the lingo?
G'day, mate.
One of them did, and it was like something mate.
G'day, mate. It's not pretty.
I remember we were talking about the Australian ads, and they were like, "How can we do this?" I was like, "Do static with an Australian flag. You can't miss that." And they were like, but the accent they showed me was not necessarily Australian. So I was like, "That's not what I hear in the."
We actually noticed you didn't publish those ads, so we may need to find someone to do an Australian voice. I wasn't cutting it for him.
Wasn't working.
We need to we need a person with the accent. That's the thing. You need that.
I think from what Hammond's mentioned and from some of the stats that he's sent over to me about the company, guys, like the thing that I look at in terms of what's really, really important at this current level is like it's like the sequence that you do things in matters more than, like, it's like the right activity or the right behavior can actually be detrimental to your business if it's done out of sequence. Does that make sense? And so say, for example, like right now, you might be in a position where you might be like, I'm super excited to, we're starting to get some of this automation stuff happening. Things are coming together. I think we have space. Let's go and start a new company, as an example. And you might, think that, like, from a sequence perspective, that is appropriate and you have the resources, but it's like you haven't proven like consistent track record with the team, the automations, the structure, the profit levels, that kind of consistency in terms of performance, not just maintaining, but actually growing, month on month on month. The company continues at the same rate with your involvement or without your involvement, right? And so, like, I think there's a lot of danger, and I think that the mindset you guys want to have in terms of like it's kind of like, I think Chris, predominantly you're very like optimistic, future looks bright, like let's push really hard. But I think there needs to be, especially as your business doubles year on year, there needs to be a healthy level of like paranoia in terms of like at any moment this could change, or at any moment these creatives could go poor, or any moment these team members could leave, and really, really, really looking through that lens of like, we're going to push really hard forward and we're going to continue growing. But at the same time, it's like some of the best founders that I find, I'll get this up on my board here. And what they do is they do the same behaviors consistently, irrespective of the outcome. I'll just explain this via this visual because it makes a little more sense. So say, for example, Let me share my screen here.
Use whiteboard. You guys are used to mine. They're pretty good.
Yeah, mine's a little bit different. Mine's a little bit different to Haven's, but same. So what happens is, you probably would have experienced this when you first started the business, right? Like, let's see if I can get a bit of a thicker one of these things. It's not working very well. That's right, I'll zoom in. So what happens at the start is usually you have a lot more of these kind of like peaks and troughs, right? You make some sales, things are crushing, they're going really well, and then you don't really know like what happened and how it happened and what exactly you did to make it happen, and then it kind of crashes, right? And then you somehow pick yourself up off the floor again, and you go again, and you're like, wow, yeah, this is it, we're crushing. And then over time, what you would hope for is that these peaks start to get a little bit longer, and they start to get a little bit more stable. And then when the trough starts to happen, you pick it up before bottom lines down here, and you might pick it up here. Does that make sense? As opposed to kind of needing to go through this complete like wipeout desperation. Am I looking for a job again? Am I going to sell my dog? What's going to happen, right? It's like, this is like terror, right? And so when I was mentioning earlier around the behaviors, so what I find is that down in the bottom here of the pit of desperation and things are going really bad. It's what you guys said when you were back in May 2023. What did you do? You went, okay, so prior to May 2023, we're using this kind of language, somewhat maybe a little bit of Shopify thing on the side, right? That was kind of like, over here. And then that was kind of like leading you into a position where things were getting bad. You probably were doing a couple of things, trying a couple of things to make money, and it got to the point where it was like desperation. And so what you did, and this is very consistent with almost every single performance-driven person, whether it's a salesperson, entrepreneur, business owner, when things get really, really, really bad, they start to get really the frequency and the cadence and the consistency of the work all goes up. And so I see this all the time in relation to measurements as far as like money, how often you're checking, measuring how much money you have available. It increases a lot down here, and you go into this full desperation mode, and you are working ridiculously hard. You are measuring like every single, like you might be checking your bank account 6-7 times a day to be like, is there where's the cash coming from? And it's like freak out mode, right? And you're working, like you said, 14 hours a day, and you're pushing really, 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 really hard through this whole period. And then what happens is you push for this whole time, and it starts to work, right? Because you've done the inputs and you've been so consistent and relentless. And there's a whole lot of like I said, paranoia and fear about failing. So it drives you through this period. And then what happens is you start to get up onto the other side here where things are going good. And then this level of consistency here goes away. Right? Because things are good. And it's like, well, all right, we can take a breath for a minute. Like, hold on a second, babe. I'll catch you tomorrow morning at 8. I'm going to have a sleep in today. You know what? I'm going to go out with the girlies this afternoon. That kind of stuff happens. And this level of relentless measurement starts to go to like this, and it stretches out, right? And then because of the nature of that, the output or the result, right, starts to slowly fade a little bit, right? And then despite it fading and starting to kind of decline, there's that little bit of like, oh, it's all good, it's just been a bad week, or, oh, it's all good, it's just been a bad fortnight, it's okay. And a bad week turns into a bad fortnight, turns into a bad month, and next minute you're plummeting back down here again into the bottom of despair. Does that make sense? And so in the stage that you guys are at right now, it's like there is a lot of that simple behavior and that like mindset allocation of like resources in terms of how are we working? Are we still working at the same clip and at the same cadence as if we were broke? Maybe not with the same level of desperation, but it's like that is one of the most cardinal rules that I find, that if entrepreneurs apply that, it's like if I always continued to work and if I always continued to only spend the amount of money that I needed to live, not kind of blow out into extravagant things and just go wild, then one would assume the business and the growth of the business would continue to grow at disproportionate rates, as opposed to me working really hard, make a whole bunch of money, get a little bit kind of fat and lazy, and then just relax down again, and then up again and up. And this is very consistent. I've seen this time and time and time again across hundreds of people, very much the same pattern here. And so where you guys are up to at the moment, $4 million last 12 months, it's good, right? But it's like you're also very much in this stage. If you look in the stages of 1 to 10 million, that stage right there, your biggest risk in terms of threat to your growth is flattery and the ego thinking that it's better than what it is, and you getting compliments and feeling like we're really moving along here and things are going fantastic. And so what you really want to be looking for is communities, groups, people that can stretch you and make you feel not as good, and also people around you that can kind of highlight to you all the deficiencies that you might not see yet in the business, that might kind of, if you don't see those things and you kind of just all right, let's just continue doing more of the same, it's like the next level to go from 4 million to 10 million, 10 million to 20 million, there are going to be some big, big, big dark challenges and problems in that situation. And it's like, you've got to be, like I said here, the game here is to not let it get down to here, right? And so it's like your game as entrepreneurs is to spend more time as the business grows more and more, thinking further into the future, right? Because if you're only seeing tomorrow, next week, maybe the fortnight after, as opposed to okay, what's going to happen next? And at that point there, where are we going to be? And at that point, which market are we going to be? And which of these customers is our most profitable customers? And which of these creatives gets more of those most profitable customers that come back on the back end and buy more again? It's like really strategically looking at that company from the front right through to the back from a gross profit dollar perspective. Where is the most cash coming from? And how do we subordinate everything else and just do more of that stuff over and over and over again? It's like these are the kind of problems that will be coming into your view at the moment. And like I said, the enemy or the potential threat that you're going to encounter the most is that little bit of a feeling of I wouldn't say resting on your laurels, but kind of like that, as in yeah, this feels good. Yeah, we really know what we're doing, and this is getting some good momentum. And sometimes when people get into that momentum, rather than maintaining that same aggressive drive, they kind of just a little bit soften off, right? And momentum is one of those things where it's it is so hard to get into, but you stop for a week, a few days, and you slow down. And then it's you've got to work to get back into that kind of cadence and rhythm. So this is something that's very, very relevant for you guys at the moment, being in that stage you're up to at the moment. This isn't very relevant for people who are starting because they just need to be sometimes down in this desperation stage and just drive like mad and push really hard. But for you at the moment, the cost of you going from here, right, where you might be making whatever the top month was, 600 grand, and you not identifying 1, 2, and 3 early warning signs, and then getting down to here and going to 100 grand a month because you didn't identify what was already the smoke before the fire, there's $500,000 there. You know what I mean? And so those are the kind of variables that you need to be aware of in terms of this isn't anymore a $10,000 decision or a $50,000 decision. This is a $600,000 problem. You know what I mean? And if I'm not seeing this before it happens, whoa, what's going to happen here? You know what I mean? And then not just that, but what if the $600,000 problem continues 1 month, 2 months, 3 months? Whew, this is serious stuff. You know what I mean? And so your perspective of how you see your business wants to go from all of these tactical things that you're starting to really, like you said, automate these things, get the creative process, get the finance process, organize them so they're really well done. But it's your attention needs to be starting to shift up and out further and further into the future so you don't have these massive drops. Or when you do have these drops, you've got organized compensation mechanisms, whether it's you lean the team back out, you've got another market to enter into, you've got another product category on the back end you can launch to the existing customers. You've got these strategies because you're okay, we're going into a bit of a slow period, understood. Here's what we're going to do. This is the plan. This is the strategy. We're going to reduce ad spend by 45%. We're going to launch this product to our list only, because that gives us 75% gross margin. we're going to do, like you've got this strategy laid out. So it's like, it's not as much of the reactive, holy shit, meltdown type of thing, because essentially the way I look at like, and this time of the year is fantastic for it, but the way I look at like, say for example, we're right here, and then we have the end of the next 12 months over here, right? And over this period of the next 12 months, you will definitively face a whole world of problems. Would you agree? Fair? Like there's going to be a lot of stuff that you're going to run into. And so there's two types of problems. There's problems that are like known, they are definitively going to happen. As an example, you're going to run into creative fatigue. True or not true? Yeah, definitely. You're going to run into some cash flow problems. Probably. You know what I mean? You're going to run into some kind of like maybe team or people, probably going to have some fulfillment related issues. And so it's like, how can I, right? I want to get from say 4 million, and let's say we want to get to 8 million at the end of this period here. And then during that period, there are definitively going to be, we've got some cash flow issues here. We're going to have some, I don't know, team members issues here. We're going to have some fulfillment issues around Black Friday here. If you can kind of compensate and prepare for those things ahead of time, because you know they're going to happen, and it's like, okay, we've got a cash flow situation happening. When is the best time to get a credit line or debt or any form of kind of like facility that you can lean on? Well, it's actually when you have lots of cash in the bank.
Right.
You go,
Not
makes
when
sense.
you don't. Yeah.
Right? And so it's like, okay, well, I've got heaps of money and I've got tons of cash flow. How about I just go and speak to the bank and I get 300 grand on a credit line, and if I don't use it, I pay zero on it. So it's sitting there, because it's not if, but it's when. Right? In this game, we need to be more prepared and organized for these volatile seasons that happen. And so it's like, cool, let me organize for that. Let me make sure that in the next 3-6 months, if there is an issue, I've got $300,000 parked there and it's under lock and key. It never gets used unless for like absolute dire periods, right? But it's like, that gives you this extra sense of like, the business is stable, the business is sound. Okay, team members, right? Who are the most likely team members that we might have some issues with? Okay, got it. How could we document their whole entire workflow, everything that they do? How could we make sure that if they dropped off the planet tomorrow, I could have anybody come in, read all the documentation, and be up to speed by 3 days' time? Make sense?
They're thinking about me here. Hey, Heyman, what happened if Heyman disappeared?
This guy, he's a huge key man risk. I'm going to be sending Hammond lots of special supplements to keep the guy operating. No, but it's very true, because it's like,
and I feel like a lot of the things we've encountered, because we just didn't know, we were reactive, and now that we've seen like a couple years of the business, like building, like you're saying, systems where we're ahead of them, not reactive to them, and when we have momentum, that's the time where.
Yes. And we also, just to position this, you guys see that kind of my vision is very aligned with what Sasha is saying here. We literally had a coaching session where we were talking about, well, this is what would happen. Let's cut on the ad spend. We exactly started implementing exactly what you're sharing here. And obviously not as detailed or not as strategic, but the goal was essentially to not be reactive and kind of plan for that. So we had those kind of seasons where we sit down and like, hey, clearly we have a season here that's happening and we need to track that. Let's prepare well for the next period. So we really started doing that, and that actually helped us a lot in the last probably 60 days.
Because the other thing that happens, like, so you've got these events, right? These events that happen, you've got the situation with cash flow. You've got some team members that Hammond, who knows? You know what I mean? That guy starts to decide he wants to sit back on a beach somewhere and drink pina coladas and stop buying media. Who knows? Maybe he gets all crazy in the mind and just, that happens, right? You've got a fulfillment situation. So, and you don't have 3 other partners that you can switch over into, whatever that looks like. Because the other real thing that's going to happen over the next 12 months, and if not 12 months, maybe 18 months, is you're going to have the unknowns introduced, right? There might be some market shift. There might be a tariff, right? There might be some very horrific family situation that happens that you guys didn't predict at all. And so it's like, when you know the problem and then you don't prepare for the problem, and then when it happens, you go, oh, I should have fucking prepared for this thing. right? And then you knew that thing was going to happen, but you didn't do anything about it. And then while your resources, although they could have been prepared ahead of time, and you could be, when the problem happens, you go, okay, yeah, got it. I know the plan. I know what to do. Grab these resources, do this thing. You come here. I need you to do this, read this document, play this game, off you go. And you're very calm and organized, right? Versus like the problem that you knew was going to happen, you didn't prepare for because you're just lazy. And then it happens. And then you're like, oh my God, we're running out of cash. And then on top of that, you've got some market correction. You've got some family situation happening. These things are enough to wipe out a business. Does that make sense? And so it's crucial that you guys, like, although you've built very quickly and the business has grown very quickly, it's like, we need to be thinking more strategically into the future, longer term, and planning and allocating capital into areas to make sure that when and not if these situations happen, you're very prepared and you're organized for those things, and it's going to keep your mind very strategic and balanced and grounded, as opposed to the opposite, where it's like, holy shit, what are we going to do? You know what I mean? And you ultimately just like really become like, yeah, masters of the universe, I like to call them the name. Like you see around corners, you're able to kind of like predict things, and you can like literally create your destiny because you've plotted all of the potentials. And the thing is, say for example, in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, as these numbers, get up into, 40 million, and you're trying to get to like 80 million as an example, as the multiples continue growing, what will happen is you will get more and more and more precise and accurate with these identification of these things, right? Q2, we're predicting this is going to happen. I can really see with a high probability I'm going to need an extra 1.2 million there. In this market, we're going to need 4 more people. We better start recruiting in February to make sure we can make that happen. And that begins to become the game. Masters of capital allocation versus like ripping into the business and kind of doing all of the particular work yourself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think that that's something that now that we are out of the hole a little bit and can like actually see more clearly, it's preparing for that and the longevity of the business and all of that like even just digging into things that we like surface level know, but want to know better, our numbers and systems, and having things like, just like you said, where if that things start to crash, it's like, okay, we are implementing this because we already predicted that this is going to happen.
That's exactly right. The other thing to what you just mentioned there is you always want to, you always, like what you said, investing time and learning more skills relative to systems, maybe like, finances, whatever these things might be, right? It's very important that when you start to invest your time, your energy, like we talked about here, your time and your attention here, for example, if it's not on the business and if it's on, for example, hey, we want to start learning about like AI and automations, and we start looking at AI and automations over here, and I look over here for too long, this is going to happen. Does that make sense? Simply because your attention's on the wrong thing, right? And so what you want to think about in relation to what you mentioned there is you have a finite amount of resources, meaning cash in your bank account, and then every single dollar that you invest into, whether it's skills, whether it's some kind of like person, Hammer example, if you put it into some technology, if you put it into some product, you put it in some fulfillment center, wherever you're putting that money. But I just want to double click into what you said around skill development, right? There was a time about 2 years ago, and I got very, very obsessed about like private equity, looking at like raising money, different like, seed rounds, venture capital, really looking at how that all worked very much, right? And there was a 3 month, 6 month period where I was just obsessing on it. I really learned a lot of things, started to study a whole bunch of like courses, mentorships, programs. And then I looked at it from the lens of like, I spent actively about $10,000 on, mentorships, programs, things that I could learn for developing that skill set, right? And then I looked at, okay, so we've just had a direct cost. I've taken my money that I have and I've put it into this thing. And now I'm like, when am I going to use this skill? Because I'm not planning on raising money right now. I don't need to raise money. I'm not going to go and like, pitch a board of investors yet, maybe another 3 years. And so if you think about it, I took this $10,000, and at the moment, that $10,000 is still out in the market somewhere, and it will be for another 3 years. Do you understand what I mean? And so like, that's not a good use of your capital, because like for me, I'm not going to learn, or I'm not going to get a return on that $10,000 that I spent until maybe 3 years time. But then the thing is, after that 3 years, the markets have changed. Maybe conditions of capital raising have changed. The legislation might have changed. And so that then begins to become a completely lost investment. Make sense? And so when you're looking at the way you want to allocate your attention, your skill sets, it always wants to be in relation to what is closest to the money, right? And so what you mentioned before around creative, right? So it's like creative, as I'm sure you guys agree, that is the closest thing to the money, right? It's like when you have those angles and they're just hot and they're cracking, you print cash, yeah? And so it's like, in terms of you seeing a return on that investment going into creative versus you guys being like, okay, we want to learn, automations and systems and tech and process to streamline the company. And then you spend like a couple of months learning these things while the creative starts to decline. It's like, then you've got less profit, and then you're learning a skill that's going to, make systems better and make more efficiency in the company. But it's like, at the cost of our creative system. And so the way you want to think about it is always like this type of, it's using the time, how long is it that the capital is in the market for, right? And then it's the multiple, how much am I going to get back? Is it a 3x, for example? And then it's the confidence, right? So it's like, am I confidently going to get it back into the same place that it actually came from? Or are we going to just have this money spit off into no man's land and I'm never going to get it back? Right? And so this is kind of the lens. If you use the framework, it's like ICE in terms of like impact, confidence, and ease. Essentially, what is the impact of us learning a creative system that could have us go from maybe one winning creative per 2 weeks up to 3 winning creatives per 2 weeks? Well, geez, that would very much change the business. That's like a 10 out of 10 impact, right? How confident are we that the creative would change the business if it was done right? I'm extremely confident. And how easy is it for us to develop creatives? We're pretty good in front of the camera. It's challenging, but it's not too challenging. Maybe it's a 5. Does that make sense? And so you rank your opportunities through this, and you look at it through the lens of like, I'm about to take investment out of my bank account that I had to work really damn hard for. I want to make sure that that is coming back, right, at a high multiple, 3, 4, 5x, with a high degree of confidence, and it's not taking a long damn time. Because companies go broke, not through bad investments, but through investments that just take so damn long to get anywhere near back to their bank account. And what happens is when this is going on here and the money's like on the way back to the account, then we need to get external cash into the bank account because I've simply got no money left. Because all my money's out here in, I'm not sure, technology development, developing new products, all of these things that are like long investments that you start to see, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months later at the cost of doing these things right now. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And it's identifying those things that I think, because we've never been there before, that it's important to have mentors and people and a community and people like yourself that can help us figure out what they are, and implement them. And so that's something that is important to us, especially now, I think, where we are.
Absolutely. It's very much just like shifting your guys' attention onto, like, you start to go, once you get to that 5 million, 7, 8 million, above 10 million, a lot of the I'm going to do it, this is my job to do, needs to then switch towards kind of who's the best person to, what's the best system to, how could I find the best solution to do this with the greatest return in least amount of time, and that begins to become the game. And so it's like your guys' attention being shifted a little bit onto that now at a macro level in terms of the whole company. Hey, right, Chris, what are we doing? For the next 3 months, what skills are we going to develop in the next 3 months? I didn't even think about them. I'm not too sure. What skills does the company need for the next 3 months? Like, where is it? And one other thing that I love doing, I think this is so helpful, especially for founders when they sit there and they tell me like, yeah, I'm a really good entrepreneur, I'm a really good business owner. I'm like, oh, really? And so if you look at like your company, and if you just like break it down into, say, for example, marketing, sales, product, call it operations, and then we'll call it like finance as an example. And then so your business will only ever, so there's kind of like levels to this thing like this, right? And so you've got like, for example, 100K, or let's say 10K, you've got like 100K a month, you've got like, say, 500K a month as an example, and then you've got like $1 million a month. And at each of these levels, each of the departments in your company, they need to be solved for. Let's just do a quick example. Let's say you guys are around somewhere in this level here, 100 trying to get up to 500, right? Now, let's say, just run it out for me real quick. If you were to say 1 to 10, what would your marketing be? 10 being just exceptional. It just brings in so much demand. It's just out of control, and it's just insane, the quality and the cost that we get leads and potential customers onto the site for. What would you say 1 to 10? Okay.
You're using your ROAS as a metric.
Let's be
hey,
kind.
If I have a 2 ROAS, I'll use 2.
Let's be kind and call it a 3, okay? Let's talk about sales then. So sales meaning your on-page conversion, your product display page, your upsells, your optimization of cart, that whole process in and on that sales page process, back-end sales, emails, text message, the whole thing that captures the sale. What would you say?
I mean, that's something that we've even seen fluctuation in, like in this most recent period, like our conversion rate kind of falling off. So bringing it back, and I think it's at like a decent place, but we don't have text. We're just kind of getting email producing for us. Maybe a 4.
Okay.
There can be way more optimization.
That's cool. All right, let's say product. In terms of quality of the product, margin of the product, the product being so good that people come back and buy again, reviews that get generated from the product, the process of people just really enjoying the product experience, and it creates an amazing kind of like, the product is very good. The product stands on its own almost, and kind of like helps people to solve the problem in and of itself. What would you say 1 to 10?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like 7?
7-ish. I mean, we definitely have a decent returning customer rate. I mean, I don't know what's like standard, but we definitely have returning customer.
That's good. Okay, let's talk about operations. So everything to do with all of your systems. If you have team members, how they work and kind of perform certain tasks and activities in the company. This is your ordering process, your fulfillment, your stock, your management of inventory, everything to do with like anything operationally inside of the whole entire company. What would you say that looks like?
I think it's pretty solid. I think I would like to have it like physically written down almost, so that that's something that I think that would be helpful just to have for future or for exit or whatever, right? Preparing what that future looks like. But operations, fulfillment, customer service, I think is solid. I would say an 8.
Nice. Okay, very good. Okay, and then finance in terms of like, maybe you have a 13-week cash flow forecast, maybe you have a budget for the next 12 months, maybe you do weekly profit reviews, maybe you do end of month reporting and look at all of your balance sheet versus your cash flow, all those particulars. And then also this can be all of those fancy words and spreadsheets and tools really are definitions of like, how much cash is the company accumulating? And so if you don't use any of those fancy tools and bits and pieces, but the company's accumulating a lot of cash, then your finance department's probably pretty good. You just haven't got the measurements over the top of it to be able to kind of determine what good looks like. So what would you say in terms of the finance department?
I think what you're saying, you don't have the tools to like the overall, like we don't know because we've never been here before. Right.
Of course.
What is good and what's not good, right? Like we're very conservative on our lifestyle, how we, what we're personally, everything for years, especially just like we put it all kind of back in.
Yes.
But I honestly, I don't know. Like, I would love someone to review our actual situation and give us insight, because we don't know.
I'll give you a feel. You have, just from what I've seen, you have significant cash flow. So you have actually a positive structure so far. You're not in a case where we have a lack of cash to scale. That's not the thing. From what I've seen, just to give you a feel, I would probably say you're about a 7 in that category. So you have significant balances in the bank accounts, and you're not necessarily running out of cash to scale up, from what I've seen. And we're well, like, we have, like, I would say probably, like, just for measures, more than 6-figure in terms of just like cash balances from what I've seen.
Good. Let's call it a 6, because I'm sure as the company's doubled in the last 12 months, there's probably things that need to change and things that need to get built to see further in the future, right? So this is a really great way to be able to determine where your attention should go into. And so it's like, if both of you girls, sat down with Hammond and you're like, Hammond, look, for the next quarter, we want to build out our operations, build out our SOPs. We want to, systemize the whole back end. We want to get team members trained, and we're going to really focus on this. And we want to get the 8 up to a 10. Let's say we did that. And so it's like, that's only. Say what? All right, we'll call us.
You're hesitating. You're underestimating a lot of things. So I'm actually
the argument is still valid, right? Let's say, for example, you were like, all right, I've got an 8 here. The operations are very good. We can really tighten this up, and we can get this very, very, very efficient. Let's get it to a 10. And you wanted to do that, right? The maximum kind of like return that you're going to get is going to be 2 points, right? And so this isn't like the bottleneck or the constraint of the company. This right here is, you guys said 2, I kind of gave you a nice little present and gave you 3, right? So it's like all of your attention, right, at this moment should really be on, fixing this and even getting this to a hot 7, right? If you could get your demand and everything to do with your ads and everything to do with your marketing, everything to do with your front end, your hooks, all of your messaging, the way those creatives are all kind of planned out, the strategy of those creatives, bringing that up to a 7, that would essentially double the company, right? If all else just stayed the same. Does that make sense? And so it's like, when you're looking to kind of like formulate, where am I placing my attention on? What am I doing? You want to always do it through this lens, instead of like, we're doing really good in terms of like my landing pages and my team members and my Slack channels and my operations in documents. The reason a lot of founders are higher in these scores here is because it is, I wouldn't say it's easier, but you can see it. Like, there's the document, and you can see the people, and you can look at the message, and you can look at your web page, and you can see that stuff. This stuff out here is like taking your money and then like betting your money on a little freaking piece of creative or image that you're pushing out into ads. And so it's much more challenging to be able to kind of like to see and to feel in control of, as opposed to this stuff here, which is why a lot of founders generally are operationally a little bit stronger. And then when it comes to demand, as far as generating demand and attracting new customers, it's usually a deficiency and a weakness, right? And so where you are at right now, this wants to be the primary driver that's going to drive you to that 500,000 and then $1 million per month. And this needs to be like really, really, really machine strategic. And what you mentioned there around, I think you said something earlier around you guys being like the face of the brand, being in the ads, but then trying to also like, get other people in the ads and things like that. I think it's like, if you work and you are in the ads and it's working and the creative is like crushing with you in it, then just like keep scaling that further and further and further, in terms of like, you just create 100 ads per week, 200 ads per week, and just like really, really, really focus on like measuring, okay, what was the reason this ad worked? Analyze, and then formulate multiple variations of that same kind of message, and just look for ways to do it. The other thing I wanted to share real quick on the creative side was this right here, in terms of, this was like a graph that Meta had shared, in terms of like, this is kind of like the creative performance index. And so you look at like the learning kind of like period where the ads are in learning, a few days that generally happens. Then you've got like days like 4 up until 15, 14, thereabouts. This is like the peak scale period. And then from 15 or there onwards until 30, another like 15 days, you've got this decline period. And so what happens is similar to what I mentioned before in terms of this other situation here, very, very, very similar in terms of this situation here. What happens is much in the same way as the creatives, people wait for the creatives to get here before finding new creatives. Does that make sense? And so you can see right here, it's like you really want to be feeding the machine all the time and making sure that you're not like, oh my God, the creatives are bad. We need to get out there. And you guys start going gung-ho and wild, and you're like running around crazy because your ROAS has gone from, 4 to 2 or 4 to 1.5 in a week. But it's like you knew that you didn't have enough creatives, but you just didn't get enough good creatives back into the machine. And so it's like you want to always be kind of like optimizing this machine. And it's like this machine will use more and more and more creatives as spend goes up further and further and further. Does that make sense? So it's like in this stage here, this is where you're testing, this is where you're refreshing, this is where you're optimizing your creatives really from day 15 to 30 to make sure you find a winner that continues to upline performance as opposed to let this continue kind of crashing and burning. Does that make sense?
Yes. And just one detail is that actually they're creatives. They're more like lifestyle content / statics rather than, for example, founder-led content. They only have one video that was used. So mainly they're just using like lifestyle content, like statics and so on. So they don't have like a leading video that's like founder-led.
Yeah. We just happen to be in, it's easier because we know what his to like shoot it ourselves, but it's not like we've positioned ourselves, I guess.
I understand.
But yeah, totally agree. And I think just like you said, preparing ahead of time before, like while we're here, instead of, which we're not there right now, but when we get up there again, not hanging out, but just continuing. Like when you have momentum, that's the best time to double down.
It's exactly. It's also like I said, it's very challenging to do because every bit of like whether it's like your mindset or how you think about things goes, oh my God, but this is so good. You know what I mean? Oh wow, we finally, you know what I mean? And it's like that's the moment where it's like when things are working, do more. When things are not working, do different. And so it's like if things are a mess and it's crazy and it's chaos, it's like you're testing. If things are working and it's crushing, it's like, Hammond, double the fucking spend. Let's push more. And that should be kind of like the philosophy that you guys implement. But I think those are some key things at the moment, particularly this time of year, right? It's like we're coming into the end of the year. It's like this is where you want to be planning that next kind of like 12 months ahead of time, plotting that pathway, feeling really clear about where you're allocating your attention and your cash into to make sure you're getting the best return of obviously like your time, your energy, and your money, and to make sure that like the problems that you know that are going to happen, they don't like derail your business for like 3 months. They simply are a little, oh, okay, got it. This is what we planned. Okay, let's deploy this strategy. That's what we organized 3 months ago. Boom, and it's fixed. You know what I mean? Because it's like those problems that you prepare for ahead of time, they should really be like a little fix, as opposed to it's a wipeout and it's 2 months of just like chaos. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's which we've experienced for sure. So it's like, how can we not feel those things as intensely again? You know, we know now, so let's prepare, which is what is the exciting part of just like meeting people like you and working with other people in the space of like learning things that we don't know yet.
And coming into the Australian market to say, g'day, mate, to all the Aussies down here.
Hey, Australian market, very untapped, you guys.
Exactly.
Very good. Very good. Well, it's been a pleasure to have a conversation, and I hope some of those things are useful and helpful, and you can take some of those frameworks and, especially like I said, over this next Christmas period is amazing. People get, lazy and they slow down and stuff like that. And so it's a great time to just have a look at the company, look at all the things that are going on, and then really plan out that next 12 months and then chunk it back into the next 90 days and be like, Chris, Shell, this is what we're doing. This is the only things that matter. These are the top priorities. Let's drive these things forward. You guys have got tons of ambition and you're very driven. It's very obvious, but it's like, let's make sure that the things that the ambition is actually directed into have the highest yield for your company's future. That's very key.
And we're very excited about that. Yeah. Thank you.
Amazing, and an amazing story. I think it's fantastic because it's such an example of betting on yourself in a big way and trusting that you are going to follow through. You know what I mean? And I think that's what I like about your guys' story the most is it's like you just bet on you and you continue doing that over and over and over again, and you bet on the fact that the future is going to be better than the current situation. And through that process of being like, let's bet big and let's cut everything else off. Obviously, you've built an amazing company so far, but there's a lot more to build into. So very, very, very exciting times. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
My
Yeah.
pleasure. My pleasure.